So welcome, everyone. Can we call the roll, please?
Councilmember Greg Natty.
Here.
Councilmember Bartoni.
Here.
Councilmember Remy.
Here.
Councilmember Dodwell.
Here.
Councilmember Boat. Councilmember McCune. Councilmember Garitano.
Here.
And Chair McCutcheon.
Here. I know that there should be a change made to the minutes. Would you like to bring that forward now?
Sure. So, in the minutes, towards the last part about announcing folks at the concerts, I had made a motion to have council, community members be a part of that, and Ms. McCune had seconded that. It's flipped in the minutes.
Okay.
To make, I believe the minutes reflected that it states a creative policy, but I believe when I walked out that was the decision, it was that we don't, that is the policy.
What is that?
No, the question was who,
It was the motion makers.
Yeah.
It just was flipped. It's flipped in the, it's just flipped in the.
Okay, well,
minutes.
actually, I'll pull it up right here.
Yeah.
Is that towards the back?
I could be wrong, but I thought you made the motion and I seconded it.
Yeah,
you seconded?
I think so. I know, I'm pretty sure he made it. and
That's right.
seconded
I know I made the motion. That's as far as I ended.
yeah.
Well, it says over here, in the minutes as they're written right now, in the draft minutes, it says, "To research and prepare a draft policy for the introduction of musical entertainment at the Music on Main concert series or other special events." And a voice vote was taken to approve the motion. So according to this, it states that a policy needs to be written up, but it doesn't state what Councilmember Remy suggested, which is what I thought the committee came out of saying, that it would be members of the community that we would like to participate in that, so.
So that's an additional change.
So I think that's, yeah, I don't believe that we need to keep the part that says to research, prepare, draft policy, that the motion was made
Right.
to do as Council Remy or Councilmember McCune said at the meeting.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually what happened. That's correct.
Are we all on the same page?
We just want to change the motion and the maker, correct?
Yes.
Yes, that's
Yeah,
correct.
but the contents of it.
And then add a component relating to the use of select residents
Right.
from the community to introduce the bands.
Yes, sir. That's right.
And Dr. Remy made the motion and Dr. Greg Nani seconded the motion.
Okay.
That's not right, John. Is that right? Do you?
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Perfect.
I'm pretty sure that's exactly what happened. because
Okay.
He brought up the whole discussion in the first place.
Yeah.
And I thought it was a good idea, so.
He just did, did you not hear?
Yeah, let's have him read
Will you
it.
read it, please?
So the motion has it what? A motion was made by Councilmember Remy, seconded by Councilmember Greg Natty, for the department to research, prepare a draft policy for the introduction of musical entertainment at Music on the Main concert series or any special events. And I'm going to add, put the citizen component in there.
Something akin to which will include select residents from the community.
Right.
Okay.
So that is the policy, right?
It will be, and then I think we need to also address if the mayor is there, how sequencing we do that. So, because typically as the
Step
mayor
of protocol.
protocol has dictated
It's
such.
Ward 5?
Yeah, well, it's the Planning and Parks Committee,
Yeah.
and Ward 5 is going to be on the agenda.
Okay,
You want to file the speaker card? Goes to Kathy.
sure.
Yeah, give it to me.
Kathy has it.
Further out
The
on
speaker's
the
cards
cards
are
are
out
out on the table
Okay.
and just
Welcome.
outside. Welcome.
Welcome.
Thanks for coming.
Confusion. So do I hear a motion to approve the amended minutes?
I do.
As
I'll
amended.
second his approval.
Okay.
He made a motion to approve and I seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain?
I'll abstain.
So the motion for the amendment to the minutes has passed. At this time, we're going to have public input for the action items on tonight's agenda? Need to wait for them to come back in, I guess, you think, or you just want to move forward on the boardwalk?
Well, the boardwalk may not be a particular subject of their interest, but we can certainly wait. I believe one of the gentlemen is here because
I
he's
believe those are both trustees of Hickory Manor, so I think they're both here for them.
Okay, so you just want to go ahead?
um,
It's your call, Joe, I don't.
I can certainly wait, or
Let's just wait a second. I'll let them know we're waiting for them.
How was your vacation?
very nice, thank you for asking.
Good.
But we're in the public input session, so. Okay, no problem. They need 20 more seconds.
Well, I can set the table at least on this.
Okay.
At our last committee meeting, the Department of Planning scheduled, with the permission of the chair, the first of 2 public input sessions on a project called Boardwalk at Mobile on the Run. At that meeting in June, the background of the project was provided. And for all intents and purposes, there's a segment of trail that was required of Wallace Oil, the owner of the Mobile on the Run, to be constructed as part of their expansion and redevelopment of that site. With the expansion, the trail was completed, and you can see that segment identified as the existing trail section. There is a gap from that to the Wildwood Greenway corridor, which takes you to the first of the 2 pedestrian bridges over Route 100. One of the pleas of Wallace Oil at the time we did the Mobile on the Run is, don't make us build a trail that doesn't go to anywhere. And our commitment is that I can't guarantee it's going to happen overnight, but certainly it's a project that's worthwhile and would provide another alternative and potentially avoid people having to cross at that busy intersection of Route 100, West Glen Farms Drive, and Manchester Road. Fast forward now to this particular meeting, and Mr. Cruz took the initiative, and we received a planning grant from the Municipal Park Grant Commission for this project. And on a list of selected consultants is Ken Keitel of TerraSpec. Many of you know from other park projects in the city of Wildwood. And so we engaged Mr. Keitel to come up with a couple of options for consideration by the committee and the community. The first option is a true boardwalk, which would mean an elevated trail that for all intents and purposes would be, so to speak, on stilts, and make the grade difference from Mobile on the Run up to the existing trail as part of the Wildwood Greenway corridor. The boardwalk has an advantage that it doesn't require a retaining wall to support its entire length. That's done by the structural system below the boardwalk or the flat surface. The other option is an asphalt trail that is dependent on a retaining wall to accommodate the change in grade from, again, the east, Mobile on the Run, to the west, the Wildwood Greenway corridor. The height of the retaining wall varies from grade to, I believe there's one section that's about 5 feet in height. Both will require some tree removal in that area. Both avoid having to go on to the St. John's property where their retaining wall exists, which is a problematic area and always has been a point of concern as we've talked about this project in concept. Mr. Keitel took the opportunity as well as to provide a cost estimate for both options. The boardwalk is, as you can see, almost $285,000, whereas the other is about $240,000. So there is a cost difference of almost 20%. The designer, Mr. Keitel, has expressed some reservations about the boardwalk, given that it's a 5% grade to accommodate the change in elevation. And his concerns are the type of surface, the characteristics of its use, particularly with young skateboarders and et cetera, that it could be a safety issue in the long term. Certainly when the department heard it was a safety issue, it was leaning toward the asphalt surface. So tonight I'm not asking you all to provide any direction or an action per se. We're here to accept public comment as part of the grant funding requirement for the planning purposes. And so Mr. Keitel, Mr. Cruz, Ms. Arnett, and I are available to answer any questions and certainly take any public comment that anyone would like to avail at this time.
Does anyone from the public have comment? Katie?
I was going to indicate that if we have some folks from the public, I'd like to hear from them first, but.
We'll go ahead and wrap this up and then we'll jump down the agenda.
Okay.
Okay.
Can
Mr.
we ask
Van Nuys.
questions? We ask questions?
Uh-huh.
I have several questions about this. First of all, we talked about this the last time. The trail's gonna be passing in the right of way of MoDOT, like some of the other parts of the trail already are, correct?
That's correct.
And there's no guarantee that the MoDOT might not come back and take that away from us sometime in the future, correct?
There is no guarantee on any portion of the trail.
All right. Do we need to have some sort of safety structure on the outside of that trail to block us from the road?
Well, the retaining wall will serve that purpose, but Mr. Mike Keitel is shaking his head no.
Well, if you look on the, you'd have to have a tank to get up the hill there. The boardwalk or the trail is actually probably 30 feet or more elevated from the roadway, if you're talking about Route 100, first off.
Yeah, Route 100.
Yeah, it's actually, that was one of the reasons that a boardwalk was even considered, is because the slope right there is about between 1-to-1 and 2-to-1 slope. I mean, it's very, very steep in that. And if you drive by there, it's all completely overgrown with, honeysuckle and what normally invades those areas. So our thought here was, originally we were going to take it more out into the right-of-way, kind of get it away from the existing businesses there. But since it's such a steep slope, our boardwalk was getting to be 30 feet in the air. And that's primarily because we have to start, and it's a continuous elevation change from where we tie in all the way up to where we tie into the trail. That's a one continuous 5% slope. So as you can see, at the
That's
grade,
the steep end on what would be the west end? The west end is the steepest or the east end?
Are you talking about the trail, or are
The
you
trail.
talking? The trail is a consistent 5% slope
All the way
from one end to the other. Yeah.
Okay.
And as you continue to gain height on the trail, the grade underneath is falling away. So it was getting higher and higher and higher. So what we did was we pulled the entire trail in both concepts right up against the face of those existing retaining walls that are there for the two businesses, for Mercy and for Mobile on the Run. So we actually have a short retaining wall that's existing. We're coming in and putting the trail in, and then there will be a variable size wall on the outside with railing all the way along there. And that wall gets up to be about 5-6 foot at the very max.
So if I understand that correctly, it's almost like a concrete canyon.
Well, it would be more like a terrace, because you've got a wall and then the trail and then another wall going further down the hill.
And you believe that the safety issues are a bigger problem for the boardwalk than they are for the asphalt?
I do, for safety reasons. I think that the wood surface or composite surface is not going to be as conducive for people riding bikes or rollerblading or whatever they're doing. I think when it gets wet, it's going to be a lot slicker. And so, in addition, if we put up a boardwalk, we have to have railing on both sides. So we've that's one of the reasons why it was starting to get more and more expensive, because you can't build a boardwalk into the side of the hill, where the trail with the asphalt, we can go ahead and have one side just die into grade, and the other side would then have the railing on it.
And you would not disrupt the existing retaining walls that belong to the business?
No, sir, we made sure that we were going at least at the base of it, if not up on their retaining walls. So we're not excavating in front of any of their retaining walls.
And again, what are you planning to put on the outside of the trail that buffers it from the roadway?
Well, there's that steep slope, and then there's also the retaining wall before it gets to the trail.
So we've got 30 feet or so of separation, the slope associated with that separation, then the retaining wall is a barrier.
So part of it's high enough above the roadway, it doesn't need to have protection?
All of it is.
All of this?
Yes, sir. If you can see the dashed lines there,
Yeah,
those are all the contours.
okay.
And, you can see they're all scrunched real close together. I can't read the numbers from here, but is that 600 there?
690.
690 all the way up to like 730.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, I mean, there's a lot of elevation change.
Yeah, well, I was trying to look at that last time, my eyes aren't so good anymore, so.
I probably should have drawn a section for you all. I apologize.
This road point here is 680 and it's 670 down here at the intersection.
But the cost on the asphalt is much higher than it is on the boardwalk, correct?
The other way around.
Reverse.
Oh, the boardwalk is more.
Right.
Well, then I think that answers that.
And would we have routine maintenance to replace components on that boardwalk,
Yes.
which would be more costly to do than just putting a new set of asphalt down?
If we were to use a wood surface, we'd be maintaining it probably almost every year.
Yeah.
With some replacements. If we use a composite, it's just more expensive. Asphalt's nice because you can resurface it basically in a day and have it in use that same day.
Mhm.
Joe?
Yeah, I think John Gregnani, Councilmember Gregnani already asked some of the same questions, the safety aspect of it, we heard that, so I think that makes the case for asphalt. The cost makes the case for the asphalt as well. And then you just mentioned the maintenance, which I would think with the asphalt, what's the average cycle before we repave an asphalt trail these days in Wildwood?
You're not going to get really wear and tear like you would on the street. I don't know, you probably haven't.
We just repaved on Old Fairway last year, I believe.
And Old Fairway's like a 2004 project, so let's say roughly 2006 to about 2018. We're probably on a 10-year cycle, which may be a little too long. And just as a sidebar, some of the trail system is going to get resurfaced here starting in the next month or two.
It sounds like the case is made across the board from a cost, safety, and maintenance perspective that an asphalt trail, plus the continuity, since we already have an asphalt trail on both ends, makes probably sense for us to just continue with asphalt
That's an
across the
excellent
middle
point.
there. So, and I think the users of that trail are cyclists, kids with little scooters, so I could understand that maybe the boards, even though it's composite, I would imagine maybe the heat has some kind of effect on that. I don't know if the durability of composite boards can withstand the hot sun that we get for a few years, or do they get more of the better?
They'll get torn up. If we're taking, especially if people are going down there with any kind of roller blades or anything like that, it will really get torn up.
Okay. So,
One other thing I just wanted to mention, there is a difference between these two in the sense that on the asphalt, we are at an 8-foot wide width. On the boardwalk, we were at a 10-foot wide width. We went to a 10-foot primarily because all your other trails are 10 foot. And the boardwalk knowing that we had to have handrails on both sides, we wanted to make sure it was wide enough. The trail down by Mobile on the Run is only 8 foot, and so we thought that it would be best just to go ahead for 2 reasons. One, to maintain continuity for the width of the trail where it ties into everything else, but also as we widen it, and since this grade is so steep, now the retaining wall is going from being 5 feet to like 7 feet or 8 feet. So it just made the most sense to kind of narrow it down as much as we could.
And there's a cost savings on this.
Don?
Joe, did you say there's grant money to help with the costs?
Just for the planning, design, and that's what we're doing now.
Okay.
In terms of future grants, typically the Municipal Park Grant Commission favors projects that have gone through the planning grant process. And that means that there's a lot more than likely chance if we were to apply, we would be funded. But that's part of our upcoming budget process. And so yes, there's a good chance we could get this funded because they accepted the project as part of the planning grant process.
Okay, thank you.
Ken?
Does that just remind me, does the pre and post boardwalk intended trail in the wintertime under snow conditions get plowed?
No.
Okay, so it won't matter then what the materials from that perspective.
We have not plowed any of our trails during inclement weather.
Okay.
But that does bring up a good point. If a deck which has air underneath it is going to hold the snow and everything a lot longer than asphalt.
Kevin, I wanted to make a comment. As some of you know, I was in Alaska a couple weeks ago. I've been up to Anchorage a number of times, and I've always marveled at the fact that they had put in a trail system throughout the city, which has now expanded immensely. It literally runs from the Cook Inlet, if anybody's ever been there, from the ocean as it comes up towards Anchorage, and then runs through the city all the way up to the face of the mountain range and into the mountain range, into the Chugach National Forest. You could literally walk from the mountains to the seashore in that town in all directions. In the summertime, it gets used heavily for biking and hiking, and in the wintertime, they use it for cross-country skiing, and even some snowmobile, they allow some snowmobiling on it. Of course, they have to compete with the moose and occasionally a bear, but we don't have that problem here. But my point here is that this is a very valuable asset to a city, and a lot of people would not even begin to think that Anchorage, a town of only 300,000 people, which by most standards is a small city, would have that kind of an extensive trail system, but it does. And they've spent a lot of time, a lot of money to install the system. I think that what we're doing here rivals that to some extent. Anchorage is a much larger landmass city than we are. They extend in all directions, but they've tied the city together very nicely with a bunch of trails. And so I think that it's probably very much worth doing. And cross-country skiing here, if there's enough snow, certainly something people could do here in Wildwood in the wintertime.
Any other comments? Joe, do you need?
Again, the department was soliciting your comments as part of the grant application process. We'll make sure that the Municipal Park Grant Commission knows we concluded 2 public input sessions, received comments at both, and we thank you very much.
Since we do have 2 of the trustees here from Ward 5, I'd like to hear a motion that we can move down the agenda to go ahead and discuss that while they're here.
I'll be happy to make the motion to
Don seconds
change
it.
the order of the agenda. So that's the motion to change the order of agenda to discuss which item?
The Ward 5 Park and MSD. Joe?
B1. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Do we need to take a vote to motion?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, we do. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstained? Motion passes.
Thank you. Madam Chair and members of the committee, as you know, for the past year or so, we have spent a great deal of time discussing the Ward 5 neighborhood park. Ultimately, that discussion led to the planning and design of the concept. That concept was presented to the community in 2 open house sessions. Comments from them open house sessions were then integrated into the plan, and ultimately a plan was finalized recommended by the committee and adopted by City Council. Once that plan was adopted, the department then began the process of creating the bid specifications and engineered plans for bidding purposes. The bidding process proceeded and was very successful. We received a bid that was less than the anticipated cost that we had estimated at the start of the process. Over the course of time, Mr. Keitel has been trying to pull all the loose ends together for Deneen Construction, the winner of the bidding process and the selected contractor, and we've run into a bit of an issue with the Metropolitan St. Louis Sewer District. Typically, and this is how the process started, if a project disturbs less than 1 acre of area, land disturbance, and does not generate more than 2.0 CFS of stormwater runoff, detention is not required. Our project disturbs less than 7/10 of an acre, and the runoff associated with the 2 pods, small parking lot, and other impervious surface is 0.7, so substantially less than the 2. MSD has taken the approach that despite those numbers, they want the city to provide stormwater management, channel protection, floodplain management, flooding management, and water quality. This was not anticipated, and so Mr. Keitel and Heidemann Associates, the engineer, have been working with MSD to address it. The plan sheet you have before you, and that was part of the memorandum, shows the design that's associated with the stormwater improvement. I'm not going to spend a great deal of time on that particular issue in that it's just a lot of amended soils, bioretention, water quality components, et cetera, et cetera. There are 2 points I want to make tonight. First, today I engaged the executive director of MSD. I say that not to impress because, as I was telling the chair before the meeting, he's the only gentleman I know now. Everybody else is retired. So I had to go to who I knew. So fortunately, Brian's a very nice gentleman, and he said, I'll send it on to the person that handles this for me, and he'll be in contact with you in a day or two. So I'm going to make a strong pitch that given the circumstances, despite what we know is a problem in Cox Creek with erosion, that if we are going to spend money, it'd probably be better spent retrofitting other detention basins that actually get a lot of water versus one that, a project that won't. And I think it's important to note, and Mr. Keitel mentioned this to me, when Hickory Manor's retention basins were designed, they took into account the roadway. That was part of their design and engineering. So for all intents and purposes, if we built the road, it could be accommodated in what exists at this time. So I'm going to make a pitch to try to resolve that. If not, I'll be back to you with a fairly substantial cost increase. And as part of that, and the reason the trustees from Hickory Manor subdivision are here tonight, is that we have to provide water quality as well, and we have to maintain that water quality, which will be in the existing retention basin that's owned by the homeowners association. There are agreements that the Metropolitan St. Louis Sewer District requires that must be signed by the city, or in this case, the homeowners association, the property owner. And we would then need an agreement with them to basically say, you've signed it, but we'll maintain it. And so tonight I'm presenting to you the agreements in standard form from the district. I would ask for no action tonight because I'm hoping we won't need them, but it is an opportunity to hear from the trustees and address any of their concerns about the future if in the end we do need to address stormwater management as part of this park property. Mr. Keitel, did I miss anything?
No, I just would like to clarify one thing. There are no biobasins that are a part of the area that's outside the right of way. The only reserve areas that are that need to have easements over them are actually amended soil areas, and it's a 10-foot wide strip where the contractor comes in, amends the soil, and puts sod down. So that's all it is. I mean, for anybody, any layman, me, anybody that goes out there, they're never going to know what that is, because all it is we come in and we put down 10 feet of sod next to the pavement. So it's not like there's any kind of structure that needs to be maintained. There's really, would be no different than it's being mowed or trash being picked up. But MSD requires that if you put in a reserve area, just to let everybody know that it does need to stay in grass form and that it needs to have the trash picked up. So,
Thank you.
okay.
So, Joe, has there been any issues to date with runoff in that area?
Well, it's entirely, since it was graded as part of the development of Hickory Manor subdivision, there's been no disturbance associated with it. So whatever's there is been there for now the better part of almost 25 years, and it's just sheet flow.
And the MSD comments are because somewhere downstream in Cox Creek, there have been complaints of erosion. And so that's the whole purpose for this.
Dr. Granati?
Question, I just did a quick calculation, looking at the contract with MSD that they forwarded to you. At $2,750 per acre, and we've got 7/10 basically of an acre, comes out to $1,925 that we owe them for the modification for the pump station to take care of that. Is that the total amount we owe MSD?
That's my understanding. There's Cox Creek surcharge, and then there's a connection fee.
Well, there's a connection fee for the sanitary, but that's totally different.
It's about $1,000.
Okay,
Is that
he's got
annual?
the whole tab there.
So there's the surcharge, which is set aside to upgrade primarily the treatment plant and certain improvements, and then just the connection fee. They charge that to everyone.
Okay.
Any other comments from the committee? Do you have a speaker's card?
Chris Looney?
I'm Chris Looney, I'm one of the trustees for Hickory Manor. We don't have a problem with the park going in whatsoever. There's 3 brand-new trustees in Hickory Manor. We're all green rookies. This was kind of dumped on us Sunday night at 10 o'clock. So it's kind of a bit of a surprise. The park going in, we're all for it. That's, everybody in Hickory Manor seems to want it, and most people would buy it, from what I understand. The issue has us hung up right now is this whole MSD thing and their requirement for amended soil, all that. Not a problem, do it, but it's the last part of it with this whole maintenance issue. I understand it's grass sitting there, but the way these contracts read is we as Hickory Manor trustees have to sign an agreement saying that we're responsible with MSD for the maintenance of this area. That's the way that language reads in these 2 contracts or these 2 easements. Now, it's my understanding that the city is saying, we know that, but we're going to maintain it under a maintenance agreement with us. We have not seen said maintenance agreement and would want to see that all drawn up before we're willing to sign off on the whole thing. Just to protect our homeowners from any liability, because if for some reason there is maintenance needed on this amended soil area, we're responsible for it. And if we say we're not doing it, MSD comes in and bills Hickory Manor homeowners. So really, if this goes through this way, we would want to see the maintenance agreement that's the city is saying, yep, we got this, and we're good. But we haven't seen that maintenance agreement. And that's what we would want to see before we're willing to put our signatures on the agreements with MSD.
Joe, you want to address that?
That's a fair assessment, and I would expect you not to accept anything less, and the city attorney will be working on it shortly for us.
Okay.
Any other comments?
No, I said, so I mean, as far as we're concerned, when we get that next step, if it even goes through that way, it sounds like this whole soil thing could be a moot point, and then, great, then there's really, we're all in favor of moving forward.
Well, I really appreciate coming tonight, even though it was late notice. I apologize
No
for
problem.
that. But always love citizen input, so thank you very much for coming forward.
Madam Chair, Mr. Keitel has one more thing.
Well, it is a moot point and it isn't.
Okay.
From the standpoint of, there's still the trail that is on Hickory Manor property. So there'll still be an easement from the city of Wildwood, or to the city of Wildwood, and they'll be maintaining the trail that is outside of the right of way. I just,
Right, right.
I just meant that there's still going to be a maintenance agreement that is necessary, whether MSD is involved or they're not involved.
Right.
Okay.
No, so our hang-up is we're right now on the hook with MSD if there's maintenance, the way everything reads right now.
Correct.
And so once we get that solved, then we're okay.
So from an oversight perspective, the trail easement would be between the city and the homeowners association. MSD is no longer involved.
Absolutely.
So we take that regional authority out of the equation and things become a little simpler. And we already have that maintenance agreement developed for other properties where we've needed it.
Any other questions?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank
No,
you
our
for
pleasure.
coming. Yeah.
So just one last question. We should wait to hear from you all about what the next step's going to be.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes, sir.
And we're fine with that.
Thank you.
Great.
Any comments from the committee?
Some luck would go a long way.
Joe, has MSD done this, kind of gone outside their parameters in the past? I
Well,
mean, they're kind of king. They don't,
Especially since they didn't get there anyways.
they don't need laws, rules, they just,
Yeah, I was actually talking to Joe about that. I don't know if there's an appeal process. I don't know if any appeal process for us to take a situation that's unique and be able to go, oh, who do we go to? And there doesn't seem to be any appeal process. It's just, this is what we want, or else we don't issue you a permit.
I just thought it was interesting because they're telling us there isn't an issue with Cox Creek, and they won't help us with the erosion. But what did they say for this project?
right.
There is erosion, it needs to be mitigated, now city
They
mitigated.
want the $2 grand.
Yeah,
The money on
yeah.
Well, we
So-
haven't had a case where they've gone, we've stayed within an acre, or the 2.0 you're saying, and they've said, well, we're throwing that out. Okay.
not to my knowledge, this is the first time we've had to wrestle with a situation like that. Now, most of our properties are outside their immediate jurisdiction, but in the case like Community Park, we started outside their jurisdiction, but we went ahead and gave them the plans because we knew we needed sanitary sewer service and thought, might as well do it now, not later. But we've always been able to work through it and keep a positive attitude.
Yeah.
Thank you all very much.
So our next action item is discussion regarding Acela digital permitting software.
So Madam Chair and members of the committee, many of you probably don't have the background that Ms. McCutcheon has from being one of the only carryovers from the group, Mr. Bartoni, two carryovers from the group that was presented this in concept at the start. Acela is a computer-based permitting system that would allow residents, contractors, and others to file applications for building permits, grading permits, special use permits, and others online, receive authorization in the same fashion, and in principle then, that would all be transferred wirelessly via the internet through St. Louis County and MSD. So the system would become paperless, and in many regards, those residents, contractors, and others would not have to visit City Hall as they do now. Acela was brought to our attention by St. Louis County and the Metropolitan St. Louis Sewer District. Both had signed on to participate, purchase the software package, and ultimately work together to create an integrated system where both Acelas talk to each other. And again, reduce the amount of confusion regarding the permitting process between those two entities, speed up the permitting process, something that economic development councils want across the region, and in the end, save time, money, and resources for the contracting community and the residents needing permits for projects. It sounded very appealing, and certainly when Kathy Arnett and Rick Brown, Mike Hartwig, and I spoke with representatives from St. Louis County, MSD, we got a very rosy picture. Therefore, based upon that, the positives associated with it, the Department of Planning stood before the committee and said this is something we'd like to proceed forward with. And the committee supported the department's presentation approach, and ultimately City Council authorized a contract with Burn Software Technologies to create the, so to speak, framework, and then Acela to basically manage that framework and do all of the behind-the-scenes work, getting information from point A to point B, et cetera, et cetera. That started a long journey that began in 2017 and continued through 2018 and now half of 2019, and we still do not have a functional system. In that period of almost now 2 years, we've learned that St. Louis County will not be integrating with MSD, and that in fact they don't intend to upgrade to the latest software package that Acela offers. They believe they can manage with their IT staff and keep it where functional without upgrades. We as the city, the latest entity to sign on, has the latest software package. MSD also now has said that they're not going to allow any access to their database. I don't know for what particular reason why, and that's another discussion I'll have with them. But to make the long and short of it, we've invested almost $70,000. Untold hours of time of Kathy Arnett and Mike Hartwig working with Burn Software in a very contentious environment, and still have no product to offer you to see or to test. It had gotten to a stage where one day I was walking by the conference room and the representative from Burn Software Technologies and Mike and Kathy were arguing, and the gentleman was yelling at them because they weren't doing exactly what he said and thought they should. Now, again, it's a system they don't know, and they were learning. We eventually had a meeting with the representative from Burn Software Technologies, and I explained my frustration. They reassigned a project manager. We seem to be making some progress. But Acela is out in the wings saying, we don't care if your system works. You owe us $27,000 this year for user licenses. I'm like, I'm not paying $27,000 for user licenses because we don't have a system that works. So we've kind of reached a stalemate. So tonight I am respectfully asking the permission of the committee to engage our city attorney to write both entities and say we want our money back. I talked to Mr. Young this morning, and he is more than happy to take that challenge on. And he is somewhat appalled by the way we've been treated by these two companies. My disappointment doesn't linger just there. It lingers with St. Louis County and the Metropolitan St. Louis Sewer District, which promised a lot and has delivered a very limited amount as well. Saying all of that, the responsibility does fall on me as the director of the department, and I've spent $70,000 of taxpayers' money, and I need to get it back, and I'd like your permission to try.
So moved.
I was just gonna make a motion.
Just take the motion. Dr. Greg Nadi.
The
Yeah, I
motion.
moved to go after him, Tiger.
Yeah, go get him.
I appreciate it.
Do I hear a second?
I second it.
Any other comments? Done.
So, oh, go ahead.
I thought you said John.
No, go ahead, you made a
No,
motion, go
that's-
ahead, you can go first.
Well, I just wanted to comment that my experience with software packages in my practice as a physician was not unlike yours. They promised much and delivered little, and this was a constant problem. The two entities that you mentioned who kind of let us down, no surprise there. That would be the first time that's happened. But the software company itself is a disappointment. I don't know if you thought that this program, this kind of a computer program would be useful to you in terms of getting things done more efficiently when people made applications for permits and so forth. That's probably not a bad idea, but the problem is that creating your own software package with your own IT outfit might be even better served than going with somebody else's package when they don't really know what you do or how you do it. So that's just a lesson learned, but it sounds like these guys never did have it right in the first place.
Well, I think your lesson learned is very accurate because I think at this stage Kathy and Mike spent so much time trying to explain our process and it just didn't seem to listen.
Yeah, they never engaged in the beginning to attempt any understanding of how our process worked. And so Mike and I kept trying to, we were even willing to modify our process to work more in line with theirs. And it just didn't, it never worked. And the two shall never.
I think the long and the short of it is they didn't get it.
Yeah, well, it was a problem from the beginning with the first manager we had.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of businesses have struggles with the software companies because they expect you to adapt your business to their software instead of their software to your business. So I think it's probably something we ran into. Did Acela or Byrne tell us that MSD and the county would be fully implemented on this, or did the county tell us, no, we're moving forward with this?
It was St. Louis County who had said that. We knew, actually, our bill that we were pursuing, at the end of it, at that point, we wouldn't be fully integrated. We knew that was like a phase 2 process, but we were trying to get on the same system and kind of get out ahead of the curve a little bit with them. It was St. Louis County who made that promise. At the time when we first met with them, MSD had promised them that they would integrate. MSD's system was newer. St. Louis County has had Acela for 10 years, and what I've heard from not the gentleman who came out and met with us, but someone else at St. Louis County, is their system still isn't fully functioning 10 years later with their own IT staff making customized modifications, which we don't have that here to try and do that. So it was St. Louis County, through our discussions, that that was the hope. And there was a number of other things that made it appealing that they've now said aren't going to happen. So.
Gotcha. Is St. Louis County just frustrated, have the same frustrations, so they're stopping? And did they find like a competitor with a better package, or they're just, let's just hit the brakes and?
I think they're going to try to work that system as long as they can for the needs that they can address and use Band-Aids and spit to keep it going.
I think they hope to upgrade at some point. What happened with them is they're on their own server, so they bought an enterprise system, so they don't pay user license fees because they host it themselves. So Acela wants them to go to the cloud. For them to upgrade their system to be compatible, they need to move it to the cloud. If they go to the cloud, they lose their enterprise system, and now they're paying user licenses. We were going to be charged $27,000 for 13 user licenses. I can't imagine what St. Louis County is going to have to pay. I think they feel at this point that they've invested so much money and so much time that they're going to keep plugging along with this system. I don't think I'm under no impression that they're looking at an alternate system at this point. They're relatively happy with what it's doing for them.
My last question, the $27,000 you're referencing, is that part of the 70 that you went back, or is that in addition to the 70?
In addition to.
Okay. So
And
we
we've
paid
got-
them 70 and you want that 70 back and you have no intention of paying the
We're
27?
not gonna pay them $27,000 for nothing.
I got you, okay.
The
Yeah, yeah.
27,000 is annual user
An annual
licenses.
user.
And it went up like 7 to 10% or something from last year. So that's the other concern we have is we're going to wind up throwing good money after bad. And if it's 27,000 this year and it continues to go up at this exponential rate and another, you know, for the volume of permits we do, it's just
Yeah.
not balancing what we had hoped.
And it doesn't sound like the department's gonna have to like come up with a whole new system or start over with something else. You're not, this isn't being really
No.
implemented.
No, if this does not work out, and if in the end we can't recoup the money, I'll be back to explain what our alternatives are. But our system works okay. We have a pretty good record-keeping basis in place. It's just, it takes more time than some of the others. And I recognize this time is one of the commodities we all wish we had more of, and when we cause residents to have to spend more time, or the contracting community, which means they're not working on the project, I always feel like, well, we need to try to improve. That was this effort, but it hasn't quite worked out as hoped.
The old principle on computers is garbage in, garbage out. And it sounds like this whole thing is a rat hole, so throwing more money at it, it's not gonna solve your problem.
Katie?
I just wanted to double check, and I think Kathy may have inferred to it, but are you looking at alternative solutions? Or do you want to just kind of get through this process and then step back and see what might be out there 2 years after messing with this one?
Yeah, we reviewed and evaluated probably 5 different software projects. So I think eventually we may return to that. I think for a while we're gonna have digital permitting PTSD and probably not pursue that. I think
Okay.
our process works, like Joe said. It's slightly archaic. It's very paper heavy, and it relies on spreadsheets and very basic things, but it works. So I think we're gonna stick
I
with
just
that
didn't
for a
know
bit.
if you were going to be bringing something else and needed some support from this committee in the coming months on helping you move forward in that direction. But I can certainly understand wanting to take a break for a while and evaluate. But hopefully there's some changes in the industry in general, and you can take a look at it sometime next year, maybe put something into the budget for next year to do some assessment, or maybe not make a purchase, but.
Your point's well taken, Ms. Dodwell. The idea isn't bad. Saving time,
it's
eliminating
not bad at all.
roadblocks, reducing costs. It's just that this isn't the approach that we had hoped, and
Yeah.
I'd like to focus on trying to get some of our money back. Our system will work while we do that.
Yeah.
And then during budget, when we get to budget in the upcoming fall season, we'll talk about it more then, I promise.
Yeah, maybe give yourself the
I
ability to
don't
check out some
want you to
other.
feel bad here, but I don't want to take a lot of time with this, but when the Affordable Health Care Act came into play, they convinced all the physicians that they needed to sign up for a very expensive $40,000 office package, which was per physician, but they were going to get that back, blah, blah, blah. The government never made good on it. The software doesn't work, and their delay in getting billing was even worse now than it was before. There's just an example, and that's the government that did that. Your government at work.
Well, you got me, and this is your government at work. And I'm over
Well, I don't think it's your fault.
$70,000.
It's not your
Well,
fault.
this was the Fed, so don't feel bad.
All right.
Joe?
I don't have any comments.
Okay. So we have a motion on the floor. Would you like to restate the motion?
Motion for the department to move forward in efforts to get a refund for investment made with Asila for software design.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion passes.
Thank you, and my apologies again.
It's not
You
your
don't
fault.
need to
You don't need to
apologize.
apologize.
You guys have been trying to work with it.
So our next action item is discussion regarding PC 9-10 Wildwood Memorial Park and Gardens.
Kind of a quirky thing. Last month, the Hicks were here. This month, they're not. So, the primary presenters relative to this idea are not here to explain it to you, and it truly deserves their attention, not mine. So, Madam Chair, I would respectfully request a postpone.
Okay, do we need a motion for that?
Make motion to postpone?
Katie, second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Our next item is street name change for Pond Rover Loop Road, Wards 1 and 5.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. Madam Chair and members of the committee, Gary Cruz, Kathy Arnett, and I have been trying to figure out the best approach to renaming Pond Grover Loop Road. In the memorandum I provided, certainly the name works, and people recognize it. We have signage that reflects it, but I think it has a bit of a legacy associated with it, and certainly in certain parts of the community creates, I think, just some anxiety and certainly some hard feelings. Kathy has up on the screen the original Pond Rover Loop plan that was part of the county's highway system plan. And truly it was intended to be a loop. Portions of that loop would be Manchester Road, Pond Road, but there would be new construction in many regards, particularly through the northeast and northwest quadrants of the Route 100, Route 109 intersection. We thought we had a good name for it, Wildwood Park Drive, because quite frankly, it'll be anchored by the new Ward 5 neighborhood park on the east end and Wildwood Community Park on the west end. Doing due diligence as you expect us to, oftentimes wishing we didn't, we sent this information over to the Next Gen E911 folks, and they basically said that park is a suffix that is used in conjunction with road names and cannot be used as a road name and would be rejected if submitted for their approval. So then we looked at some different options, and I don't want this to particularly linger and not get acted upon. So tonight, we're just looking for some input. We thought about potentially naming the road for a feature in one or both of the parks. Like in the case of Community Park, Great Meadow Drive, because the majority of the road parallels or is just next to the Great Meadow area in Community Park. It could also then be named just some numerical basis. I said First Street, but certainly it's not the first street, but it certainly is first among a lot of discussion over the last few years. So I guess I was being a little humorous there. And then we could just name it after what happens in the park, recreation. Call it Recreation Drive. So tonight, we're kind of looking for some thoughts from you all. Then if we get those, we'll submit them to the gentleman that Gary's been working with that represents the 911 system. And we'll see if we can get a thumbs up and hopefully have it back to you in August, if no later than September. So we've given you some food for thought, but we'd love to hear yours as well. Thank you.
Don?
Joe, what about opening up name suggestions to the residents and having some sort of a contest associated with it, and we can acknowledge a winner with that? Might be a school, a third grade might win. I mean, is that?
I think that's an excellent suggestion, and it's been mentioned before. And if you'd like, we can certainly go in that direction and put together some ideas for your action.
The word park cannot appear anywhere.
They
For
gave us a-
example, suppose you called it Park View Drive.
Yeah, they gave us a whole list of suffixes that we
Well,
cannot
suppose you
use.
called it Park View Drive.
Can't.
Can't use the word park.
You can call it Rosa Parks.
I even thought I outsmarted them. I thought, well, we could call it green something. No, you can't use that. That's a suffix. Trail, parkway, park, trace, green.
Let's call it the road of many names.
Ken?
Joe, since incorporation, have any police officers or military members in the city of Wildwood died in the line of duty?
We had a resident of Wildwood that was killed in Afghanistan. We did a proclamation and a memorial for that individual. Police-wise, not in Wildwood, but obviously there has been one that was killed in the Green Park area.
Mhm. Is that at all a feasibility for a road?
Again, two things I fall short on is naming parks and naming roads. That's why I'm here tonight.
Well, I really like the idea, and we talked about that before, of making a contest.
I'll make that motion then, if everybody's up for me.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if you were actually bringing up what I was hearing, but to have the kids participate in it at Green Pines?
I would, yeah, if you get the kids at Lafayette and at Green Pines and, you know, this name's submitted by the first grade or the third grade class and to recognize, then you're recognizing a whole group of kids if they end up winning, and, or the school can, you
Yeah,
know.
the school could do
The
it.
school itself could submit a name and put those, try not to make it too complicated, you know, you get, you know, with these parameters, can't include this, 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 and this, but, I think it's,
Yeah, we just have to
You know.
explain what they can't.
that area's had a lot of angst about this whole thing, maybe we get them to, a little feel-good moment.
And maybe give them a choice of, you know, they can submit up to 5 or 8 names or something like that, so that, I mean, you get 2,000 students at Lafayette, you may want to go more than just one name.
You might not like this, Joe, but I'm serious about it. Just name it Greenwich Drive.
I hate that name.
Joe Vunich Way?
I like it, but nobody will be able to pronounce it.
We can't call it Joe's Way, we already got one of those.
There you go, Joe's Way.
That's the department's motto, Dr. G.
Well, somebody came up with,
Joe's Way.
I'm totally kidding.
somebody came up with Citizens Way, but we didn't think that might not be a good idea. So,
And that has a little connotation to it.
yeah,
Yeah.
it does.
Mhm.
Yeah, we thought that would not be a good choice.
Yeah.
So we have a motion for Mr. Bartoni to formulate a contest for the naming.
Have a second? Katie? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion passes.
You are
Just
very-
as a follow-up with that, how long would this take to put something like this together? Do you think they actually start getting results? And the reason where I'm going with it is, would it be something we could announce a winner at, like the Wildwood celebration? And have that as part of that, or is that?
Kids won't been in school long enough to
We
do
don't
that.
have
Okay.
enough time, enough
Okay,
time to.
okay.
They do start early. They start on what, August 12th?
August 15th, 12th.
But the
Yeah.
celebration's on the 24th. I was hoping to get back to you the parameters of the contest, what we would send out, so you could take a look,
Okay.
approve. There's a chance we could do it at the art festival,
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
just going to
that'd be
say
neat.
that.
because we do have a stage and microphones, and we do a lot of announcements, and there's generally a good crowd as well.
And plan is to continue, can include all schools within the Wildwood city limits?
Tell me what you all think.
think
We had
so.
talked about Green Pines and Lafayette.
They're just the 2
would-
schools
They're
that
the
are
two
in the
schools that are
area.
closest.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's also parochial schools and other things too that people
Well,
go to.
yeah, St. Albans.
St. Albans is right
I
there.
wouldn't omit anybody.
No.
Yeah, just open it up.
It's
Yeah,
open to-
every resident, every school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If a business, if the YMCA wants to do something.
Yeah. It doesn't matter.
So,
Yeah, just a quick, more of an observation, I don't know the reasoning, but this came actually to Admin Public Works in May.
I saw
So
that.
I wasn't sure, because I saw it on the agenda for tonight, and I thought, okay, maybe it just got shifted over. Not that Admin Public Works is happy to hand this over to Planning and Parks, but just saw that it was,
I saw that too.
I was at that meeting that night doing another presentation, and we ended up talking about maybe it should be over in Parks,
okay.
because that's what we were hoping to name it, because of the relationship, and so, and think Rick's got a lot on his plate right now anyway, so.
Yeah.
That's fair, thank you.
Well, yeah, I'm excited about that. The kids can draw pictures and all kinds of things. I think it's,
Is there, there'll be a character limit to that? Is there, we'll have to get that
Yes.
material.
We'll have to get it from,
I'll get that information from Scott Hummel, our superintendent of streets, so we don't have a street sign.
no, we don't want a 6-foot street.
And if Beaver Lane or something like that wins, we're
if
gonna
that
blame
wins, I
Bartoni.
Well, I think
You won't hear
probably
from me for a while.
just make some comment that all the names will be reviewed before
Yeah.
final discussion is
Sure.
made.
I do have another suggestion, and legitimate. Considering that he and you were both on that committee, call it Jack Dandrive. That's easy to spell.
Call it what?
Jack Dandrive. How many of you know who Jack Dan is? Vice chairman of the committee for incarceration, who was on the Pond Grover Loop Road study with Joe back when St. Louis County did a study years ago. Yeah, I could, but I'm not a kid. Well, I'm childish, but I'm not.
Do we have a founder's
Whoever's
drive?
making the final decision, is that going to be this committee? Okay, I just wanted to make sure that.
Unless Mr. Garitano wants to switch it back, but.
Oh, no, I wasn't bringing it up to take it back. We've got enough on our plate.
Is there a founder's drive in Wildwood?
Oh, man.
No, don't do that.
Oh, why is that? I think that would be,
You can put it in.
You can
with-
submit that.
You can
You
submit
can
that.
submit it, but I'm not fond of that either. I think that individual names of people who are no longer with us would be an option. Jack Dan is deceased, you know, I don't think we should name it after some existing group.
well, if we hadn't had that group, we wouldn't have Wildwood. So I think it's important. So throw it into the mix and whatever.
You can fill out a form.
Great Yanny Parkway.
What?
To who?
Well, they won't have to use,
No, nobody ever spelled that either. It would be as bad as Garitano.
God bless you.
Okay, so our next action item is policy regarding replacement of existing street trees.
And I'll start with my apologies to Chair Garitano from Administration Public Works. This particular item was recently at that committee. The committee took action and forwarded a recommendation to City Council, which adopted changes to the policy. The reason it is back is not to revamp the entirety of the policy. It is just one component of the 13 points. And the reason it's being brought back is the Department of Planning, which oversees the subdivision and development regulations, those regulations require street trees as part of new subdivisions. The department received several calls from trustees in Windcrest Addition, and Woodcliff Heights regarding the change in one of the components of the policy. That being that street trees would no longer be placed in a tree lawn area 3 feet or less in width. Now, in the memorandum, I tried to explain why we ended up with a 3-foot wide tree lawn area. We were trying to balance several competing components relating to residential development. First and foremost is most of the ridge lines in Wildwood are fairly narrow. The ridge lines are where the roads go. And once the roads are set, the homes, dwellings are placed accordingly. The wider the right-of-way width goes, the more the homes get set back from that right-of-way width, which means that narrow ridge then pushes the grading down the slope and causes it to create a lot more land disturbance than early planning and zoning commissions, city councils, directors of public works, and others thought wasn't reasonable. So what we ended up doing is we narrowed the right-of-way width, trying to maintain a reasonably width street, which meant the tree lot area became the variable element in all of that. Street trees can thrive in 3 feet. The problem we face now, after 20 years of them being in place, particularly in Windcrest and Windcrest Addition, they've caused some of the sidewalk sections to buckle. That's an expected problem. It took almost 20 years to reach the point where we had to do replacements. But what I'm hearing is from the trustees, the homeowners associations, and I just received an email that I wasn't able to print out, but I will send to you tonight, from the trustees in Windcrest Edition, is that they've come to expect those trees in that lawn area. They've thrived, they've matured, and they've made a positive impact on the overall development. So what the department is requesting of the committee, and it's certainly for discussion and consideration, is that we will not plant any new street trees as part of a new subdivision in a tree lawn area that isn't 4 to 5 feet in size. But those tree lawn areas that are 3 feet and already have existing street trees, we would follow our current policy in that regard. So what I guess I'm saying is, if it's there, it's kind of grandfathered. If it's not, we won't make the same mistake. We'll put them in tree lawn areas that are larger in size and have less impact on the sidewalks. So in your memorandum, the department is asking for the consideration that, can't find it now. Don't I have it, doesn't it? No. I'm asking for item 13, Lucky 13, to be amended so as it reads that in existing subdivisions where street trees have been placed in a 3-foot lawn area, they would be replaced once by the city, twice, but with half of that cost shared by the property owner, and then thereafter none. But any new street tree in a new residential setting would not be in a 3-foot tree lawn area. We'll make sure that we get ample space in the future. What we're doing, for the most part, is we can do it in town center, I think, because we can, we have a lot more flexibility in lot widths and lot depths that we don't have in the regular non-urban or R districts. We really don't have much suburban area left, 1 acre density housing, and in the non-urban we don't require street trees. So I think we can make it work. So that's the department's request. And again, the request is coming from not the department, but from many that have benefited from our street tree policy in the past.
So, Joe, in Villages of Brightleaf, what, is it 3 foot, 5 foot, 4 foot?
It's even less in some instances because we were trying to reduce the amount of grading. So what we did is we created a 5-foot easement in the front yard area of the private lots for the street trees, which I don't like much. As soon as they started planting street trees in the homes that were finished and being occupied, we got a lot of calls from people saying, who put a tree in my lawn? And I had to explain to them, it's not your lawn, we have an easement for the tree. So we put it as close to the sidewalk, but not between the sidewalk and curb, but behind the sidewalk. So that's what we've done.
And I heard a comment somewhere before that, that the residents are responsible for watering the trees in the right-of-ways, is that correct?
When we replace a tree, we ask the resident to help us.
So all the new trees that have been placed throughout the community recently, does the same apply to them?
In like the instance of Brightleaf and Main Street Crossing, the lots come with irrigation, so it's pretty straightforward. We allow irrigation lines to be placed in the right-of-way for the tree lawn purpose, and so it's not been an issue. But yes, let's say in Evergreen where we're replacing ash trees that were removed, we would ask the property owner to help us out with the water. Now, most of our contracts with the landscapers, they are required to water for a certain period of time. But thereafter, we just, you know, if it's not a good time of year. But we also address that in our street tree policy. It's from October to May now, so we don't get the summer clearance anymore.
So do the residents know that?
When we remove a tree, a dead street tree or a diseased street tree, Scott Hummel, our superintendent of streets, meets with the property owner and explains it.
And then I have one more question. So does, the gumball trees come up all the time.
Right.
So it has to be a diseased tree that is taken down. So a healthy, thriving gumball tree will not be removed.
That is the position of Admin Public Works when they were asked to consider this. I was an advocate of not removing healthy trees, so I'm guilty as well, and City Council concurred. What I would say is diseased, dead, or one that is a clear and present danger because of a nuisance. Otherwise, we'll do our best to work with the individual property owners if there's a if there's an issue. I can assure you of that.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions?
Mr. Brown is aware of the change. I understand his practical approach as an engineer to trying to protect the sidewalk, but I think we all can agree that street trees really make a difference, and we'd like to try to keep the palette in place as long as we can.
Joe, is it the full policy that's grandfathered or just the component of the width?
We're not changing the first 12 items in the policy, only the last, the 13th. And there's a group of subdivisions that we did between 1998 and roughly 2012. Woodcliff Heights, Windcrest Edition. I'll forget some of them, but for the most part, I would say it's about a half dozen to 10 that would be subject to this change.
Do you need an action from us?
I would request a recommendation, favorable recommendation regarding the change to item 13.
Do you need a motion to do that?
Yes.
I'll make a motion to make the change.
Joe, what about if we remove item number 13? Is it, if that's the only place that it applies to, I mean, is there other questions that we would have to address?
I think from the standpoint of Mr. Brown, the Administration Public Works Committee, and even the Department of Planning, this sends a strong message. Stop what you're doing, don't do it again. So leave it, I would suggest.
Okay.
Did I see somebody else? Katie, do you mind making a comment?
You mentioned subdivisions that were developed under Wildwood when we were incorporated. What about those areas that have those trees along those locations and planted them prior to our incorporation?
We addressed those. That's part of Evergreen and West Glen Farms, the discussions we've had about the ash trees, the gumballs,
Okay.
et cetera. And so we've taken on the right-of-way, so we've taken on the street trees. And so in principle, it would apply there, although the county didn't allow street trees for a long period of time, but all of their tree lawn areas are 5 feet.
Okay.
So we don't have the same problem.
I don't think in Hickory Manor they were all 5 feet either.
Probably.
Because I know we got a tree put in our front yard.
Yeah. And again, Hickory Manor was done by St. Louis County, so in some instances, what ends up happening is the homeowner puts one out there just because. And county would not necessarily know that, but they don't sanction it. How's that?
So you need a motion.
Please.
Your motion.
Yeah, I made a motion to change
I'll second.
number 13.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstained? Motion passes. Okay, now we're going to park matters. The first item is an agreement with, we discussed that already, sorry about that. Next item is advertising with West News Magazine for senior programming, all wards.
Oh, this is only Slack. If you'll recall, last month, we had a rather lengthy discussion about senior programming, which included our, in 2019, the department greatly expanded our offerings, and then we had a discussion last month about additional ones that we want to try and offer it within the community. The department's been discussing those and trying to figure out ways to staff and accommodate and provide additional programming. While we've been doing that, Sharon Huber, who's the editor and the owner of West News Magazine, approached us about a collaboration that they're looking at doing. It started with the city of Manchester, who has a very, very active senior programming efforts and within their parks department. And so the thought was all of the communities served by West News Magazine would advertise on a calendar all of their senior programming. It serves a number of purposes. One of the biggest one is reaching that demographic, not via email or something digital. Every resident in Wildwood gets West News Magazine, so it is a very easy way for the city to get a direct mailer out each month to all of our residents. So the cost would be shared. It's a 2-page spread, and this is just a mock-up that they did In fact, I noticed I have them backwards, so my apologies. Page 2 would definitely come before page 3. It wouldn't be laid out as such, but you can see they're color-coded according to the 5 communities. The cost of a 2-page spread is about listed at about $2,000, maybe almost $4,000. It's $1,955 for a full-page ad. So what we would do is split that cost, and actually we'll be getting a discount from West News Magazine. So the cost would be split amongst the 5 communities, and it would be $300 a community each month. And then across the bottom, as you'll see, their salespeople will sell advertisement across the bottom. She thinks that we may even be able to include the city logos just with the amount of space that she's going to have. So we'll get a little promo that way as well. So the department is supportive. We think that for $300 a month, that is quite a deal to get a direct mailer into everybody's household with our senior programming. So we would like some direction from you all.
Joe?
I'll make the motion to go ahead. I think $300, this is a no-brainer to reach the full community. It's great for the 55-plus community that's not online. And it also is great for all the other residents to see what we're doing. So absolutely, support it.
So your motion is to?
My motion is to proceed with the $300 fee.
And Dr. Remy?
Seconded.
Seconded. Any other comments?
I just have one to add. There's no long-term contract. So let's say after 6 months, we're not getting we asked for feedback. How'd you find out about this? And no one mentions the West News Magazine. We could always come back and explain, maybe we're not getting the interest that we thought, and then we can take it up again.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion passes.
Just a follow-up question. I love this. I think that's fantastic. Do you know if there's any plans by West Magazine to do something similar on the other age spectrum, under 5 years old? I think this is great, and I think I know people look at this.
They have not mentioned it, but I will bring it up.
Hello?
Yes, Katie. I was just
We're all
thinking, because
tired.
when he said under 5, I was thinking about the Parents as Teachers program in Rockwood. I wrote that up several times, and I think that we would definitely want to include them if we're going to do something under 5.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where my head was. Katie, go
No,
ahead.
that's okay, good. That's a good, I was just going to make the statement of, can we make sure that any other events that are maybe posted on our website or our e-newsletter, is there a method that we can put those into the West News Magazine as well?
There is. There's and we've kind of started discussing this, making a better effort on just press releases and just sending them out. Sometimes they pick and choose a little bit depending on how full the
much
calendar
space,
is.
yeah.
But yeah, they're always open to us sending them, and then they'll include it. And they're going to do another. They've done an in-kind sponsorship for Celebrate Wildwood, so they're going to do another big spread for us for that event as well.
Okay.
Great.
And in regard to the senior pages, when they do become live, is it possible to, with frequency, weekly or every other week rather, post it on the city social media page link to have a link to it?
Absolutely.
We can do it in the newsletter as well.
Great.
And one of my hopes is, and I'm assuming Ms. Hoover will not have an issue, like when we have a 5K run, we have age groups that include 50 to 59, 60 to 69, et cetera. So I'm hoping we can put those events in there as well. Because it is applicable.
Yeah.
It's not solely for seniors, but certainly a main component.
And the next item is potential use of public space in Glencoe area for athletic fields, Ward 6.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair and members of the committee, as you know, we did have a lengthy discussion at our last meeting in June about the Glencoe area. We didn't start there, but we talked about all of the public properties under the ownership of the city of Wildwood But inevitably, we ended up spending most of our time in discussion in the Glencoe area. Out of that came two topics, sand volleyball courts and pickleball courts. I have some good news to report. Ms. McCune, who is on the committee and was at our June meeting, went back and talked with the leadership at the Harbors at Lake Chesterfield Homeowners Association, and they were very positive about us participating in a partnership to use their tennis courts for pickleball. And we would collectively work together as a partnership to make that available not only to residents in the Harbors at Lake Chesterfield, but all residents of Wildwood. So that's something that's underway already. Tonight's topic is more something that came from a conversation that the chair and I had after a meeting this past month, that there are some specific needs that have been identified for athletic facilities in Wildwood, ball fields, athletic fields, etc. And that in many regards, Glencoe is the only area suitable for that. So I think the chair just wanted to maybe talk a bit about that, see what your impressions were, and then kind of give us some direction as we move forward, both through our next meeting in August, but our budgeting process for 2020.
Yeah, I was just looking at some of the surveys that the city has done, and 76% of the participants in the surveys, I think, where we were asking what they wanted in park, wanted some kind of athletic field. And one of the best athletic events for floodplain areas are soccer parks, because you really don't have to do, much to it, and if it floods, there's not really any damage to it. And soccer is a pretty popular sport throughout St. Louis as well. So I just thought that that might be an interesting idea, is to put a soccer park in one of our floodplain areas, and that looks like probably one of the best ones, so that's kind of why I wanted to bring it up. John?
I'm looking at the survey sheet. I went over this last night. Looks to me like the highest recommendation was neighborhood park activities with picnics and barbecues being 65% of the respondents, with the highest percentages indicating park activity. And I've heard Mr. Hunich talk about the Glencoe area before, and I understand some of the residents down there have some concerns about parking, noise, and other issues. And if you put in ball fields, soccer or whatever, I'm wondering if we're really doing them a favor.
Yeah, what I did is I went down and added up the different percentages off the different parts. I didn't just stick with one. So ball fields was 24%, basketball was 18%, tennis was 9%, soccer was 9%, volleyball was 3%, and waffle ball was 3%. So that's what I did. I went through all the pieces and added them up. Jeff?
I think whatever we do decide, if we decide to move forward, committee input will be key. But we do have some really good opportunities. I'm assuming if you go back to the previous slide, we're talking about the Grand Avenue 309 lot, is that it? And the former site of the, well, I think the church is still there, right?
It's still there, but it's
But
going down.
it's been acquired, so that's the 3rd Street there. So that is very flat ground over there. And I know a gentleman, he lives right across from the church. I think he's been there a while, so we'll get input from them. But those are nice parcels, plus they're continuous now with our Glencoe Community Park, if I recall, unless there might be something in between that's possible. There is. Oh, we got it all the way through? Perfect. So we really have a good opportunity. Plus, we're going to move forward with the expansion of the parking for the trailhead, which will create additional parking spaces. An opportunity to really make that an area that has activity during the summer, spring, maybe fall, for some uses. So I certainly support looking into it. I think that's something we just don't have. When you look at other municipalities, they have municipal fields. Here, you have to rely on the athletic associations. St. Monroe has their soccer program there, so it may open up opportunities where we can have some more sports and activities going on throughout the city.
Yeah. Ken?
Two questions. So I mean, I wasn't involved in the creation of that Ward 5 park, but if I had input back in the day, I would have said we should have put a water stream like other places do, because that's a lot of popularity for children.
Yeah, that was in there, that was removed.
Yeah, it's too bad,
It was
because, I mean,
expensive.
people that have kids know that that's a really hot thing to do, great thing to do, but apparently people put it down. At least they have shade for the parents. Where's our basketball court in the city?
We don't have
Haven't had one.
Yeah, so, exactly, I knew that, because I'm a former basketball player. So,
Really?
yeah, a little bit, surprising, Greg Nowdy and I were on the same team.
MDs.
He played for the Giants and I played for the Forms.
Well, so basketball, I bring this up, so, there's a lot of possibilities, but I would really like to see a set of basketball courts in this city. And the nice thing about basketball courts, unlike what you're talking about with soccer fields, it's not going to bring groves of cars in, because basketball just doesn't have 11 players times 2 teams plus 6 other fields. It's you have 2 side-by-side full-length courts. You can also then develop summer basketball leagues, etc. We don't have that here. In fact, there's very little. I mean, coming from the East Coast of New York, where we had basketball courts on every block. It's just so odd that we don't have it, and so I'm forced to bring my boys always to an indoor court. I grew up playing outdoor basketball all the way from March 1 all the way to November 1, basically. I don't have that possibility here, so it would be great to consider that in some sort of planning.
Yeah, if you drive around the neighborhood and see all the basketball hoops where they're not supposed to be. Okay.
Well, I was just going to mention, while you had said, well, let's put up some soccer fields, but looking through your census of what was of interest, that was lower on the totem pole than anything else.
The highest was ball fields, and then basketball was the second highest.
And we still do have residents living somewhat in that area, and we're already dealing with, I think, a traffic issue and a heavy use issue. So I'm a little concerned about making it so cool that we have another swarm of 150 to 200 cars trying to get in down there on a weekend. What would happen if you just left it as an open field and kids played in a field? And I don't
You
know.
with their handheld devices while they're running around?
No. No. They brought their kickball with them and they played it in the field.
We kind of encourage that. We call it free play.
Uh-huh.
We maintain the areas. We finish cut all of the floodplain areas down there.
Yeah.
There's nothing that prohibits them from doing that.
I mean, I like the idea of basketball. I really, really do. I just don't know if this is the place for it. Because I'm looking at what used to be a very quiet community. And granted, a lot of these people are selling their homes and they're making an okay benefit off of it. But you've got Bluffview Park on the one side, and I go to Bluffview to walk through silence a lot of times, although the bikers, not the Harleys, but the peddlers, can get in your way sometimes too. That's just my perspective.
Well, I mean, I like the idea of taking the ideas to the residents. I mean, we don't know, they may be okay for that or not.
Yeah.
Or maybe just finding a place for basketball.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
I think there are some places for basketball locations. I'd love to see one in the community park.
We
Some-
can do that.
What?
We can do that.
I know, we can do that
Really?
easily, yeah.
What about putting a basketball court behind the movie theater in that area where there's that detention basin back here? That's kind of, we talked about doing different things with that. Be a great place for a basketball court because it's in town center where everybody can get to it. You can even light it. If you try to light this in a remote area, you know what's going to happen. You're going to get a lot of flack.
Yeah,
And so you want to put it somewhere where you can use it even at nighttime.
Love it.
Oh, I think
Yeah.
that's a great idea.
Great idea.
Great
that's a good idea.
And bring more people up to the town center area.
Town center.
Yeah, I think that's a utilization for an area that's basically right now a dead area.
Yeah.
for basketball.
Yeah.
Now, back to the Glencoe issue. The problem, and Joe, I may be wrong, but I've heard you talk about this, parking was a big issue, and you had to deal with that parking thing recently to expand the parking. Do you think that Glencoe can handle this additional traffic if you put in a soccer field?
Not without additional parking.
Yeah.
Because on
So-
Saturday and Sundays, even with what we're
Mhm.
adding, there's still gonna be parking in the streets. There's still gonna be parking.
I mean, with space like, I'm sorry to interrupt, but with space like that, they come down, they ride on the little train, families can have a picnic in that space out in the middle of the field if they want to. They can throw a ball to their kids back and forth in some spot. I mean, think of Forest Park and the number of people that just show up and find a spot on the grass. And I just think if we've got congestion there already with lots of other activities, if people are hiking and they can finish their hike, or if they're biking, they can finish their bike and then just kind of plop down there.
I think what you're saying will be what Great Meadow will be for in the community park. And so what Ms. McCutcheon was proposing about soccer, I mean, we're probably already halfway there if we were to make that a grassy area, flatten it out. I mean, soccer is really just adding in the goal post lines. So maybe it's a two-step approach. We just get the area cleaned up, seeded, flattened out, see how that goes, and then maybe we revisit then at that point whether we want to take it a step forward to put some kind of sporting, like soccer or something that already utilizes what is already there.
Yeah.
And Dr. Remy can get his basketball courts behind City Hall here.
Yeah.
That's all I really want.
But you have to watch out because the ball will land in the community garden and then you'll be complaining about your tomatoes getting squashed.
No, that's a pretty high field. That's a pretty high fence.
Going along with the basketball up in the community or the town center area, sand volleyball is also very popular.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you could add that and, you know, somehow have a couple different courts, and because it seems like most of those people are also looking for something to do before and after, and it could help promote the businesses in the area. Down here, there's a difference between building a soccer park and a soccer field.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So if you want to build a soccer park,
This is
No,
the
just
place
that's
to
this
do
is
it.
not the place to do that. I mean, if you go down to Blue Fuse or go to one of those and watch cars coming in and out, and it's more than one car per kid, because everybody drives their own kid, and grandparents are there, or somebody else is there, you would be looking at, within that 15 minutes each way of a game changing, I mean, you're probably looking at 50 cars per field.
Yeah.
And that is, I just don't know how
No.
popular or even how feasibly and successful that would be. But
No.
if you
Yeah, I
wanted to do
wasn't going
something.
to, I was just going, let's put it there so the kids can use it to play.
And if, but what you could do there is have something kind of tie it in with the trail and the bike riding and the train for the kids, is have a smaller field with smaller goals and a, 40-yard field, and you could have this small little area over here with a playground, and you could have a couple other activities for kids, because by the parents have them down there, they might be able to keep them outside, get something to eat, have a pavilion and barbecue, and the kids could continue to have that. You might be able to do something like that with some success, but
Well, we've already got a lot of those things in the
yeah,
park that's down.
yeah, and just kind of, offer more and maybe promote a little bit more, but I think the soccer park would be,
It's a big deal.
that's,
That's
yeah.
good.
It may not, the location may
No, I
not be
didn't intend
conducive.
that. No,
People
it's
aren't gonna
throw
come
a couple
down there
of-
anyway.
No.
It's
Yeah, I
not,
think
No.
It's gonna be
It's
a
not-
waste.
it's not conducive.
No.
No.
And
Right,
Ms.
it's- no one's going
McCutcheon
that way.
Didn't intend the full soccer park. She was
No,
talking
just
about
throw up
soccer
some-
fields.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, there's a lot of
and go.
older fields. I mean, I grew up in the city, there was a lot of places that had very short fields, and you didn't know they were short until you got to another field. This place is
And
huge.
I know it's, I mean, families are really structured anymore. So kids don't just really have the opportunity to go, oh, let's grab a ball and go kick it around. I
Yeah.
mean, they just don't do that as much as
No.
they did previously because they have all the electronics.
Yeah, you could put half
So
a
I was just
basketball
thinking
court
if we
down there.
put
You could
up
do a lot of,
a couple of end goals
some big playground.
And just let the kids if it's there, they'll play, they'll come. If it's not, they won't.
Yeah.
We've got
So
end
that-
goals in our church that get moved around all the
Yeah.
time, that
Yeah,
just, in a big
So
field.
what do you want to do at this point? Are you looking for a motion to explore what would be involved in pursuing something like this?
Gary and I were just talking, I think we can put together a schematic to kind of show what it might look like and the different alternatives that are available in Glencoe for, let's say, a single small soccer field. And we can also put together something behind here. We've already worked on that to a certain degree. So with the motion and second, if you authorize us to proceed forward with some exploratory stuff, we'd be glad to do it.
okay, motion,
I'll move that you can move ahead with exploring options.
you seconding?
No, I just had one more question, but I don't want to.
We have a second.
I'll second.
Okay.
Just last question on this motion, which I'm fully supportive of, but we're just talking about that little square right there, right up the top, correct? Can you just point it out to me just so I can make sure I'm on the same page as y'all?
Kevin,
Yeah.
this area
Yep.
between the southern edge of Glencoe
Yep.
City Park
Mhm.
and Third Street,
Mhm.
and then there's a couple of areas down here. There's no homes here.
Yeah.
So that might be an option too.
So it's going to be potentially contiguous of the whole.
Mhm.
So
The
the only
white streets also don't exist.
Yeah,
So Fifth Street, Fourth Street,
Okay.
Second
they're
Street.
paper streets.
Yeah.
last question, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to derail the motion. I'm in support. The only other consideration that people don't talk about, but I think it's always nice to consider asking these groups if there's any potential need for certain things would be to reach out to the Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts in the area to see if there's anything that could be outdoorsy that could be also brought to a park. I know that we don't have that, but it's also pretty hard to find stuff for these guys because they're diminishing their green space, believe it or not. So,
See what we can.
anyway.
Do we?
We had a motion on the
Motion
floor.
on
Yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
I derailed
All
it.
those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion passes. The next item is public art opportunities within the plaza area of State Route 100 pedestrian bridge near State Route 109, wards 5 and 8.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair and members of the committee, the city of Wildwood has always taken a proactive approach to art, both outdoor and indoor representations. As you can see here in the community room, we've cooperated and formed a partnership with the community college to have art rotated through this particular space as well as in the atrium on the first floor here. We also have had a permanent sculpture in the back as part of the parking lot design, and we've had rotating sculptures out in front in the area of the stormwater detention. We've also engaged many of our developments in town center to provide public art, and it's a component of the public space requirements, and they've embraced that fairly well, and you'll see that as part of the prime and future projects that come along. We also have been working with a number of other communities in the West County region, and it's called the Creative Communities Alliance. And what that is a group that for the most part represents cities, and they engage artists to provide sculptures that can be placed outdoors, and they are on a rotating basis. This year, we received Frisbee Dog. And Frisbee Dog is at Gailey's storage yard, and we would like to place it on the plaza area at the southern end of the second pedestrian bridge near Route 109. Now, that's Ward 8, not Ward 5. The reason we chose that is there are homes in that immediate vicinity, whereas on the opposite side of the pedestrian bridge, it's a little more isolated, and we thought, for the most part, we try it there, see how it holds up, and then if we need to, we can rotate between different locations in the future. This kind of folds into what we've been trying to do across the city and create art opportunities. We have a plein air event, we have an art festival, we do our partnerships with different entities, and this is just another step in the process. Certainly, if you have an idea of a location that's different than this, we'd love to hear it, and if you support it as a group, we'll be glad to move Frisbee Dog there. But we have a starting point, and we'd like to proceed and get your input.
Katie?
I'm fully supportive of it. Are you talking about putting it in the circle there?
That was the first goal. We're going to let Mr. Gailey tell us if it's workable or not.
Okay.
But it would be in that general vicinity, so
Okay.
as you come onto the bridge from north heading south,
Mhm.
or if you're coming up the street in Canberra, you could see it first.
It's the little circle on the bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
one on the top, that's, I told Deborah, that's Ward 5 Park.
I was gonna say,
I just think it, I just
Here we
think
go.
we've got cross-country teams,
Many
we've
Ward
got
5
track
parks.
teams, we've got a lot of users that go through that particular area, and to see something as cheerful as a puppy dog.
I was gonna suggest a statue of Garetano, not to supply the
Yeah.
pigeons.
I want to
You're on
Greg.
the other end.
Okay, when
What-
you get your personal, when you get your personal statues made, then we'll have that
I
discussion.
want a Greg Naughty bust.
So
And Garetano will supply the pigeons.
So I bought a Mega Millions ticket today, so if I win tonight, you two are going to be on the bookends.
We will.
There you go.
I can't wait to see it.
So does it actually have a Frisbee jump?
Yes, it does.
Yes.
And how does that work?
Who
That's
holds
a
the
darn
Frisbee
good
up?
question.
Who holds the Frisbee up all day?
We've volunteered Kathy so far. Now we have to stop.
I'll do it, yeah, for a while,
We need a
yeah.
motion.
Mr. Gailey's a pretty creative guy. We're going to hand that off to him. Quite more seriously, we're going to contact the artist, the sculptor, and ask how they intended it to be, and then kind of go from there.
Ken?
Do we, just so I understand, we obviously only have one Frisbee dog out there.
Correct.
Okay. And then is at any given time that you only have one sculpture to display?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to throw an idea out that incorporates Wildwood Celebration idea. I think it would be fantastic if at Wildwood Celebration Day, we had some sort of event, call it a Ward Olympics event between wards. And the winner of the wards got Frisbee dog, or got something like this, and they got to have it for the whole year. Because let me tell you something, Mr. McLaughlin and I are upset that we don't get Frisbee dog. Ward 3 doesn't get this sort of activity. And I, you know, it's Ward 5, it's Ward 8, it's the same wards, but it's never Ward 3. But I'll tell you something, if we're playing dodgeball against Ward 5, you better believe we're gonna win Frisbee dog. So just an idea.
I would love to have
You're going down
enough
here, Tom.
sculptures to rotate
Mhm.
as much as possible. I think it adds a real kind of intangible
Yeah.
character.
And I think we could find places in Ward 4 and in Ward 5 where
Yep.
it could rotate maybe every couple of months.
Ward 5 is getting their park, so
Yeah.
I don't think they'd be disappointed if we wasn't in a rotation there.
Yeah.
She's not accepting the dodgeball challenge.
It'll be held at the Ward 5 Park.
Ward 1 has real Frisbee dogs, we don't need them.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I've got them in my front yard,
Just-
in my
I
house.
would just like to say, I love the idea of art. I've noticed that's also very big in the city of Chesterfield. And you do see art in random places over there. So I think the more we can do that here, and I know, as you mentioned, the Prime will have art right at the very corner of the building that's going to look really nice. So I would love for Ward 8 to adopt the Frisbee dog and get them out of storage.
Yeah.
So I'll make the motion if that's
Summer.
what you're asking for.
We are, sir.
So I'll make a motion for the
I'll second.
installation of the art at the southern end of the bridge plaza.
Okay, second. Katie seconds it. Any
I
other
do have a
discussion?
serious question. What are you gonna do about potential vandalism?
That's a good question. My understanding from the other participants, the cities that have been in this Creative Communities Alliance, the sculptors know that these are public locations, and I think they treat some of the sculptures with the same stuff we use on our bridges for anti-graffiti.
Mm.
So,
We also have a value amount for insurance. So it's
Say if
not
it
that
really
much.
gets rough out there. then-
I think it's a low risk.
Ward 8 is tough.
It'd be tough to go after a dog.
I'm sorry,
Especially if
Joe,
it's
you see
alive.
that?
They put us,
West Side Story.
Make sure we check your pet finder references.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstained? Motion passes. Okay, we are getting close to our appointed time. We've got 10 minutes left on that. I know we have some closed session items.
With your permission, Madam Chair, if there's any questions on items 5 and 6 under park matters, Mr. Cruz or Ms. Arnett would be glad to answer them. If not, then I would respectfully request that we move into closed session.
Okay.
Sure.
Joe,
a motion to move into closed session.
Second.
Ken seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any
We have
opposed?
to do a roll call.
We have to do a roll call vote. You're right.
Sorry, gentlemen.
Councilmember Magnani?
Yes.
Councilmember Bartoni?
Yes.
Councilmember Remy?
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell?
Yes.
Councilmember Garitano?
Yes.
Chair McCutcheon?
Yes.
Is this closed session information?
That's- That's not, is that the item for closed
Oh,
session?
No.
no,
I don't think so.
okay. I just knew we had the camera in and here I was about to.
Yes, we are.